What you're about to hear is my raw thoughts, completely unscripted. I just sat in front of a camera and rambled for an hour with notes. I tried to cut it down into a coherent video the best I could, and this was the end result. Oh, and spoilers, by the way. How did this happen? You'd think that it would be pretty hard to mess up giant robot fights in a movie, considering Michael Bay does it pretty well. Despite how terrible those movies are. And after how amazing the first Pacific Rim movie was, you know, you'd think that these people would have it in the bag, but somehow Pacific Rim 2 not only managed to be extremely disappointing, but somehow managed to have mediocre giant robot fights. I did not think that was possible. Do you guys like eggs? So when it comes to geeky shit, I'm definitely more of a video games guy than a movie guy, as you can tell by the shelf behind me. Really, the only movies that I've enjoyed and go out of my way to watch are comic book movies. With that said, though, I definitely made an exception for Pacific Rim. The first movie was like a love letter to all things geeky. You had the Jaeger AI, which was essentially voiced by GLaDOS. You had the Jaeger helmet design, which was inspired by the Halo Spartan armor. To top it off, it was giant robots fighting giant monsters. That's fucking awesome. Who the fuck doesn't want to watch that? Well, I can name one person, actually.
Stop shooting me!
So naturally, when I heard that there was a second Pacific Rim movie coming out, I was really excited. And I thought to myself, even if it's not as good as the first movie, it's kind of hard to fuck up giant monster fights. That's what I thought. But they managed. They managed to not only make it uncreative, but also just boring. And I didn't think that was possible. So the first red flag of the movie was the opening scene. The first Pacific Rim movie opened with a very intense and tragic scene between Leatherback? I don't remember the names of the kaijus. With that opening scene, we're able to establish the Jaegers, how we need two pilots, that neural handshake, and the kaijus, giant monsters that come out of the Pacific Ocean. And we see this dude's co-pilot get taken out by a kaiju and he's forced to pilot the thing himself. It's a very tragic scene, but it gets you really hooked into the movie, and that really sets the tone for the rest of the movie. It's just really intense monster fights with admittedly well-written story segments written in between. The second movie opens with John Boyega's character breaking into like a scrapyard where there's a bunch of Jaeger parts that are able to be scavenged. And that's a cool concept. I appreciate the world building. It's not until John Boyega's character meets up with this other character that stole what John Boyega's character was gonna steal, is making her own Jaeger, which is small enough to be piloted by just one person, which is a cool concept if they built on it more, which they don't. I don't know a lot about the Pacific Rim lore, I just really enjoy the movies. I'm a casual Pacific Rim fan. So with the scene that we open up with, it's this tiny little Jaeger that's able to curl up into a ball, getting spotted by this universe's giant Jaeger police, and trying to run away from the law, and then they get captured and then recruited into the anti-kaiju Jaeger fun club. I don't care about these characters. You haven't given us a good reason to care about these characters. You gave us too much exposition at the beginning for why we shouldn't care about John Boyega's character, who's never really redeemed. And to top it off, I guess this movie's trying to capitalize on the Marvel jokes. You know how in Thor Ragnarok how they would take a lot of moments to crack jokes? And how it felt like it worked because the setting it was in kind of made it feel organic.
He's a friend from work!
In this movie, it felt like there were two different writers, one for the story and all the serious moments, and then one for the comedy. Whenever they tried to crack a joke, it just took me out of the film. This movie felt uninspired. It felt like a cash grab. It felt like no love and passion went into this film. So the movie starts to get a bit interesting as soon as we get to the Rogue Jaeger plot, which is when John Boyega's character and Gypsy Avenger, which I guess is an attempt at a follow-up to Gypsy Danger, they tried. I didn't care for it design-wise, but they tried. The movie starts to get interesting when they have John Boyega's character and this other guy who is a cunt at first, and then just somehow becomes nice. I don't I don't even remember what made him turn to like John Boyega's character. There's a little bit of history between them. They kind of build onto why this guy hates John Boyega's character, but they don't really do a great job at it. They're both chosen to pilot Gypsy Avenger, and they have to take it out and just smile and wave. And then as they're doing that, another Jaeger comes out of the ocean. It's a pretty cool fight between a Jaeger and a rogue Jaeger. It's really cool. It's a cool concept. You might have seen these articles going around that Pacific Rim 2 is the best Transformers movie ever. And that's subjective, but yeah, kinda. It does have some good robot-on-robot fights. But like no one's able to figure out where this rogue Jaeger comes from. And then they track it down to a place in the Arctic. Or not Arctic. It was like an island that this lady was trying to transmit from a helicopter. They go to this island and they find the rogue Jaeger there. And then what, in my opinion, the best fight scene in the movie is between Gypsy Avenger and this rogue Jaeger. And then once they kill it, they find out that there's a kaiju brain in it that's piloting the whole thing. That's a cool idea. That has a lot of potential, but we never really see that plot show up again. On a somewhat related note, it felt like this movie didn't quite have the budget of the first one, which might be true. Let me check. This movie only had a budget of $150 million? Okay, so that might be the case. This movie had $40 million less to its name than the first Pacific Rim movie. And that's kind of obvious now that I look at it. I had suspicions that the budget of this movie was less than that of the first movie just by the cinematography. Whenever you're in a whenever you're in a Jaeger fight, it's always cutting back between something. It's getting obscured. We're getting shots back to people. It's like they're trying to cut corners so that they don't have to animate everything. And now looking at the budget, I can see why that's the case. Does that excuse it? No, in my opinion, it does not excuse it. I feel like as a follow-up to the first Pacific Rim, which was phenomenal, you know what your base wants. They want to see giant monsters fighting giant robots. If you can't fund that well, then why make the movie? Now, I'll be totally transparent. Growing up, I really enjoyed the Transformers movie, and I've only seen Transformers 5 once, and even though it was pretty meh, I still found the fights enjoyable at the very least. So this movie kind of suffers from Amazing Spider-Man 2 syndrome, where it has too many subplots going on. That's just what I'm going to call it. I'm pretty sure that there's been a term for that forever. But there's too many plots going on. We have the coming-of-age story with this new girl who built her own Jaeger, which had a lot of potential, didn't follow through on it. We have John Boyega's character, who was a dropout from whatever the police was. We have all the young recruits that are going to be future Jaeger pilots that are just not interesting, and they hate the new girl a lot until something happens and then suddenly they all love her. And then we have the subplot with Newt and Herman, which, in my opinion, are the best parts of the movie, somehow. I loved these characters in the first movie, and they were the ones that sort of helped at the very end. Newt did the neural handshake with the kaiju brain, which is how they were able to find out what the precursors were planning. Also, did they call them precursors in the first movie? I don't remember that. But they established a side plot in this movie where Newt kept the brain of the kaiju, or kept a kaiju brain, I don't know if it's the same one, and just goes home and just neural links with it as if he was just snorting coke. It's like he's addicted to it. He needs to keep doing it, and it feels good to him. But because of that, the kaiju starts to sort of take over him, and he's sort of being like the messenger boy for the kaiju, which is kind of cool. We're able to give the kaiju a voice, which we didn't have in the first movie, which I liked. I appreciated that. This might be hypocritical again, but Newt's character was such like a breath of fresh air with how boring this movie was. He felt overly comical, super comic booky, and that was really enjoyable. I really liked that.
That's what I'm talking about!
He was just so overly excitable that he was just kind of interesting to watch. There's this really... I'll get there in a second, actually. But then there's a part earlier in the movie where Herman says that kaijus that come out of the portal have a distinct half-life radiation coming from them, and that the kaiju brain that was inside the rogue Jaeger doesn't have that same half-life signature. I don't know if that's the right term for that. I failed chemistry. But he's basically saying that the kaiju brains were already here. They weren't coming out of the portal. There hasn't been a portal that opened. And then once you see that Newt is sort of like snorting kaiju brains, it's not hard to put two and two together. You sort of find out like, oh, okay, he's sort of masterminding the whole thing. And that's kind of a cool subplot. So they're making these drones that they're going to push out like worldwide that are going to help protect us from possible kaiju attacks. Cool, great idea. In a moment that's built up to pretty well, the robot brains that are put into the Jaegers turn into like kaiju brains, and then all these little tiny drone Jaegers are turned into kaijus. And that's a cool moment. I'm finally ready to see some cool action, but no, it's just dumb human moments where the action keeps cutting away. We're seeing it from the girls. You've seen it in the trailers. It's that shot where the girl's looking around and everything's fucking fighting and it's really cool. I want to look at the action, but no, you're not going to. You're gonna see fucking people trying to run away. You see the dude that has the giant spiky ball running over, and then he just... Basically, all of the Jaegers get killed, but it's so hard to tell what's going on because we keep cutting back to the people that we don't care about. We want to see the giant robots fight. I understand that if this was any other movie ever, that going back to the people would be kind of like, well, yeah, we need story, but it's like, I want to see... I came here for the giant robots to fight. And I can't see it. So... Whatever. And then they find out in a plot twist that the motivations for the kaiju isn't what we established in the first movie, but instead it's they're trying to get to Mount Fuji because kaiju blood is super reactive with rare earth elements, which I don't think that's how reactants work. But then again, I failed chemistry, so what do I know? But, oh hey, Mount Fuji has a bunch of rare earth elements, and the kaiju, they're not tearing up these cities to wreak havoc and terraform the earth. No, they wanna... They're just all trying to go to Mount Fuji. They're all trying to converge into Mount Fuji.
It's snowing on Mount Fuji.
A lot of people are saying that this sort of retcons the kaiju's motivation in the first movie. Like, they do say, like, oh, they're just trying to terraform Earth. So I guess that's still correct, and they're just adding on to it. But it kind of goes with the philosophy that should go into these kind of movies. Keep it vague. The more vague you have it, the more engaged I am. It's like you tell me, Jaeger's good, kaiju bad. Okay, cool. Why did the kaiju want to attack the Earth? They want to make it their new planet. And then it's like, oh, why are the kaiju attacking the city? Oh, they just want to destroy everything. That's cool. I hate the kaiju. But then you change it to, why are the kaiju attacking the city? Oh, it's because they want to go to Mount Fuji. What? Why?
To be fair, this rule only applies if the writers don't care. If the writers care, it could sometimes turn out pretty good.
You're pretty good.
Maybe it's just me. I did not care for the kaiju motivation in this movie. So all of the drones come out, and they're reopening the portals in the Pacific Ocean for the kaiju to come out. For the real kaiju. We haven't seen a real kaiju yet in this movie. And this is the end of the second act. We only see kaiju in the third act of the movie. Which... I hated the marketing for this movie. So the kaiju finally come out of the portal. There's 3 of them. They're both sort of spaced out, and they're all trying to go to Mount Fuji. The girl who we established was able to build her own Jaegers is now able to fix all of the Jaegers that got broken when the base was attacked by all the rogue drones. And here's what brings out my biggest complaint with the movie. I think I've said it a couple times already, is that this film is not very creative. The first movie had such cool moments in it. Like, the whole movie was creative, even the world building. The Jaegers were built not only to fight the kaijus, but build morale in society. The Jaeger pilots were treated like rock stars and shit. They were celebrated all around. Idris Elba's character was amazing. That's the only character I remember from the first movie. The first scene, where they have to rescue a boat and then make sure that the boat is okay, and then his co-pilot dies, and then it's just this dude on his own finishing off the kaiju that was going to attack the boat, and then him struggling to pilot the Jaeger on his own and returning to shore. That scene was beautiful. There's a scene in Japan, but all of the people are in this bunker, and Newt may have accidentally led the kaijus to the bunker, if I'm remembering correctly. I haven't seen the movie in a while. So you have the stakes are high for all of the fights in this movie, and then especially the fight at the end, where they start to take the fight to the kaiju's portal with the fucking nuclear reactor part. That shit was so cool. And even then, all of the Jaegers felt creative. We had the one that looked like Shockwave. We had the fucking Chernobyl boy. I don't remember. Chernobyl boy. Oh, that's mean. The scene where he's using the boat as the sword, and then the shipping containers as brass knuckles. The fucking scene where Gypsy Danger's flown into space, and then they use the fucking sword to cut the fucking pterodactyl motherfucker in half. It was so good. Like, there were things that I really enjoyed with this movie, like the kaiju Jaeger Trojan horse that they sort of let in with all the drones. Newt being a messenger for the kaiju, for the processors. The Jaeger on Jaeger fight in the ice area. I don't think it was in the Arctic. I don't remember. I don't really care. And the transformation for the mega kaiju, where it's being ripped apart, that was great. Like, visually, the movie is great to look at. The fight scenes, when they are interesting, visually look great. I wanted this movie to be better. I wanted to enjoy this movie. I was very excited for this movie. It's a real shame that they didn't take this movie to its full potential. It could have been so much better. Well, that was disappointing. I think I'm gonna go back to my old method of editing videos after this. Thanks for making it to the end of the video, though. I know this shit was really boring, but I really appreciate it. In the event you liked this video, maybe hit the like button, and then maybe subscribe if you want to see any more future videos, I don't know. This channel is a bit more about talking about video games than movies. I just had to make an exception for Pacific Rim. If you want to see the most recent video I did, click right over here. Or if you want to watch me do a more professional review where I deconstruct my history with Mega Man X on the Super Nintendo, one of my favorite games of all time, click right over here. I'm also on Twitter at TheOtherTravGuy, and that's about it. Thanks so much, guys, and have a wonderful evening.